strong economic global growth. That's the kind of thing you'd expect him to say. Does that suggest that nothing significant is really coming out of this summit?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say that we haven't seen the kind of global multilateral action that many had hoped would come out of the G20 to tackle some of the most pressing issues facing the global community today. The Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and Japan as the host certainly had grand ambitions from this summit, and not least the fact that the two biggest economies in the world are locked in this bitter trade battle, and there was an understanding, or a hope indeed, that they would be able to find some sort of resolution or some way to tackle that issue. On the sidelines of the summit, of course, we've had a meeting between President Donald Trump and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and in just the last hour or so, Chinese state media has reported that the trade talks between them will resume and that tariffs have been put on hold for now. So that is something definitely positive that's come out on the sidelines of the G20 summit. But meanwhile, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pointing to a few things that have been discussed between the G20 nations, talking about the fact that some basic principles of free trade were agreed upon. But, you know, again, very watered down language, apparently. Typically, when the G20 countries come together, and in the past, certainly, what they've done is come together in the face of major financial crises. The 2008 global financial crisis, for instance, was one where they really pulled forces together to try and combat what was a disaster for the global economy. This time round, you don't see that kind of energy or commitment or unity, in fact, and that's been foreshadowed ahead of the G20 summit, showing the splintered nature of the international community at this summit.
And Karishma, these G20 summits hinge on these one-on-one meetings between the leaders of two countries. And just as we've seen with the economy, we've also seen with climate, no big breakthrough announcement there. Any one leader can impose their will and hold up any kind of progress here if they want, can't they?
Yeah, they can. And on climate change, it's interesting. It was a topic particularly important to Japan as host. And in fact, Japan was hoping to push forward a bigger commitment on reducing plastic waste in our oceans to zero. In fact, what we understand is that marine waste, the G20 countries have agreed to work towards a goal of reducing that by 2050. But again, that is a really long target, a very long way away, and the United Nations has pointed out that if the world continues at its current pace of the usage of plastic and plastic ending up in our oceans, we're looking at a situation where there could be more plastic in the world's oceans by 2050 than fish. That is a really disastrous prospect, and it's the kind of thing where you would expect the G20 community to come together and try and solve these kinds of global issues. That's the point of these sorts of multilateral institutions. Instead, what have we heard here? We've heard from Vladimir Putin saying that the liberalism is obsolete. The liberal world order and democracies of that nature who've been functioning like that for the last several decades, they can't dictate the way the world is run anymore. So it is a really surprising look at the state of the world community today, given how many challenges are facing the global economy as well, for instance, and how fragmented this grouping is.
Karishma, I don't know if you can see from outside the venue what we're seeing, which is an empty podium waiting for the President of the United States to arrive and give his press conference. He's going to do that. We will no doubt hear his thoughts on his meeting with Xi Jinping. We might hear about his next moves because he will be off to South Korea. Let's follow him there for a moment and imagine what he might get up to at the demilitarized zone. He's extended this invitation to the North Korean leader. Do we think that summit, that meeting is going to happen?
Well, we simply don't know. And, you know, frankly, it has taken many people by surprise, because ahead of the G20 summit, when asked, US officials said no such meeting would be on the cards. Lo and behold, you had Donald Trump tweeting in the early hours of this morning, look, you know, I'd love to say hello to you, Kim Jong-un, and maybe we can shake hands at the DMZ, ? And as is his characteristically flippant style on Twitter, he then proceeded to address that in some comments to the press, saying saying that if they had 2 minutes, that's something that he would like to do. The North Koreans have now come back, of course, and said that they never received a formal invitation or an official proposal, but that seems like a very interesting suggestion. Now, according to analysts on North Korea, that in itself could be seen as a possible yes, but until the two men actually meet at the DMZ on Sunday, it's very hard to tell how seriously we should take this particular tweet. Having said that, if they do meet, it would be the third time and still no progress on denuclearization, the way that President Trump has consistently promised. So yes, indeed, a very unusual invitation, but perhaps very characteristic for President Trump.
And President Trump clearly puts a lot of faith in his ability to negotiate these deals one-on-one. He has often expressed his sort of disdain for other partners and big institutions. Staying with North Korea, the US and North Korea aren't the only players in this game. South Korea wants action. Japan has a concern about what happens to the North